is a quiet realization that comes from looking back and noticing how little was chosen outright. Movements happened before reflection. Preferences settled before language arrived. What felt natural was often what reduced tension in the room, in the body, in the moment. Connection seemed to ask for one posture. Stability asked for another. Belonging required reliability, so the system adapted. Not once, but continuously. What remained was not a personality, but a prepared state, a way of functioning that once made life workable, and did so efficiently enough to disappear and persist. It begins without ceremony, not at a clear beginning, but somewhere already in motion. A room remembered more by temperature than by shape. The light a little dimmer than ideal. The air holding a faint edge of waiting. There is a child there, but the word child feels too large, too formed. Better to say, a small body learning when to speak by listening to the room exhale. Voices move around the edges. Sometimes they rise quickly. Sometimes they fall into silence that feels heavier than sound. Nothing dramatic occurs. No single moment asks to be remembered. Only patterns, only repetition. When the body leans forward slightly, things go smoother. When it stays quiet, the atmosphere softens. When it anticipates, when it adjusts early, there is less friction. This is not strategy. It is not even thought. It is a subtle calibration, a micro shift of shoulders, a pause held a fraction longer, an instinctive reading of tone before meaning arrives. There are moments of misalignment, speaking too soon, moving too slowly. Each one brings a small tightening, nothing severe, just enough to register. And so the learning continues, not stored as memory, but as posture. Over time, the room becomes predictable, not because it is stable, but because the body has learned how to meet it. What works gets repeated. What reduces strain gets favored. What allows the moment to continue without disruption settles quietly into habit. No one names this. No one needs to. The body simply becomes good at it. Years later, looking back, it does not feel like adaptation. It feels like temperament, like nature, like the way things always were. But the movements remember. Adaptation begins before there is an idea of self. Before identity can be narrated, there is timing, there is tone, there is restraint. The body learns when to enter and when to wait. How close is close enough? How much presence is acceptable? These adjustments are not conscious. They happen at the level of readiness. A subtle forward lean, a held breath, a softened voice. Responsiveness becomes primary, not as a choice, but as a condition. The nervous system tracks what happens after each movement, not as meaning, but as sensation. Ease, tension, release, constriction. What follows ease is allowed to repeat. What leads to constriction is quietly edited out. This is not avoidance, it is efficiency. The body learns how to keep things moving, how to maintain continuity, how to remain inside the flow of the environment without drawing excessive attention or resistance. Adaptation here is not reactive. It is anticipatory. A reading of the field before entry, a shaping of expression before it leaves the mouth. This is how form begins, not as belief, but as readiness, a way of arriving already adjusted. When an adjustment works, it does not announce itself. There is no internal reward ceremony, no sense of accomplishment. There is simply less friction. The moment proceeds, the room settles, the interaction completes. This absence of disruption is registered as success, and success, when repeated, becomes default. The body no longer tests alternatives. It does not need to. What works is already known. Over time, the adjustment no longer feels like something being done. It feels like the starting position. Tone stabilizes, pace stabilizes, the range of expression narrows to what has proven reliable. Not rigidly, just enough. These patterns accumulate, layer upon layer, each one small, each one reasonable. Together, they form a configuration, a way of functioning that requires little effort because it has been practiced thousands of times. This configuration is not fixed. It is adaptive, but its adaptations are now refined, predictable, efficient. What once required attention now runs automatically. This is how a version of the self takes shape, not through declaration, but through repetition, not through intention, but through success. As the configuration stabilizes, something subtle shifts. Feeling becomes less informative than function, not because feeling disappears, but because it is no longer required to guide action. The body already knows what to do. The system prioritizes continuity over exploration, stability over intensity. This is not suppression, it is organization. Feeling still occurs, but it is routed differently, less into action, more into background. Function becomes the stabilizing force, the reliable sequence, the known response. This allows the system to operate smoothly, to move through complexity without needing constant recalibration. There is a quiet competence in this, an intelligence that does not speak. The body handles the moment, carries the weight, keeps the pace. Over time, this way of functioning feels like identity, not because it expresses something essential, but because it is consistent. It shows up the same way across situations. It performs under pressure. It minimizes disruption. Feeling becomes optional. Function remains central. The system does not mourn this. It does not register loss. It registers efficiency. Eventually, the operational self becomes familiar. So familiar it disappears. It is simply how things are done, how the body enters a room, how it responds to demand, how it manages proximity, expectation, time. There is trust in this configuration. It has worked. It has carried the system through uncertainty, complexity, change. Its reliability becomes its invisibility. Because it does not call attention to itself, it is rarely questioned. It does not need to be. This version of the self is not defended. It is assumed. It does not feel constructed. It feels given. And yet, it is the result of countless adjustments, each one made in service of continuity. A way of being that formed quietly, intelligently, without authorship. Not a story, not a choice. A state of readiness that learned how to function and stayed. Morning at work. The desk cleared before anyone arrives. Email drafts written and reread, tone softened, edges rounded. Questions anticipated before they are asked. Updates offered before they are requested. Meetings move efficiently. There is appreciation in the nods, relief in the lack of friction. No one comments on the effort. There is no reason to. Things run smoothly. That is the point. Late afternoon with family. A familiar kitchen. The rhythm already known. Who speaks first? Who fills the silence? Who steadies the mood? Small adjustments happen without pause. A joke redirected. A comment absorbed rather than answered. A task taken on before it becomes a request. The atmosphere stays even. Dinner completes itself. Later, the body feels tired without knowing why. An evening alone. Shoes placed neatly by the door. Lights set to a comfortable level. The room arranged so nothing interrupts. There is quiet here, but not rest. The body remains alert, tracking time, anticipating the next requirement, even in its absence. Stillness feels earned, not natural, as if it might be taken back if held too loosely. The system stays ready, just in case. These ways of functioning do not dissolve when the environment changes. They were built for reliability, not for specific conditions. What once ensured continuity now persists as loyalty, a fidelity to patterns that proved themselves over time, even when the room is different, even when the stakes have shifted, even when no one is watching. The body remembers what worked. There is a quiet hesitation around loosening these configurations. Not fear, not resistance, something closer to respect. They carried the system through. They made life workable when it needed to be. To release them entirely would feel less like growth and more like erasure. So the tension remains between present conditions and inherited readiness, between what is required now and what once ensured survival. No resolution announces itself, only awareness of the overlap. Old structures operating in new rooms. There are moments when the pattern becomes visible, in the brief pause before responding, in the subtle tightening when nothing is being asked, in the impulse to stabilize what is already stable. Sometimes the body notices first, a familiar posture arriving before the situation clarifies, a readiness that precedes necessity. These moments do not demand correction. They simply register. A recognition of sequence, of timing, of how quickly function takes the lead. Attention lingers not to intervene, but to observe how the system organizes itself without instruction. No outcome follows, only a clearer picture of what is already in motion. This version of the self was not chosen, yet it is deeply personal. It is composed of responses that made sense long before they had names. It moves through the present with tools from the past, not because it is mistaken, but because it is loyal. There is something quiet in seeing this. Not relief, not regret, just the recognition of a structure still doing its work, still ready.